Good afternoon. I am Paul Byrne. I am the Research Data Services Librarian here at Syracuse University. Uh, Basically, my job is all things data. Um, and of course, since Qualtrics is for collecting data, I provide the basic end user support. I don't do the back end IT stuff. Um, but if you ever have a question in trying to get something done in Qualtrics, I am the person to talk to. I also support SAS, Stata, SPSS, a little bit of Excel. I prefer the other things. Finding data, general research methods, statistics. As I say, anything that has to do with data, you can ask me about at any time. Don't just wait for classes. If you're working on a survey during the week, you have a question, hit me up. I've put in the chat here, there are class outlines for each of the classes as we go along. You can print them out or download them and annotate as you see fit. All of these sessions will be and are being recorded, and I will be posting those recordings on the page that I have linked there. I try to do those as soon as possible. Usually by Friday, I can have them up. Tomorrow might be iffy because I'm on a search committee and we have a candidate coming in all day long. So I might have a few minutes here and there to process everything. Okay, well, let's get started. When you first come into Qualtrics, you will usually see this screen, and it's called the home page, the home screen, whatever you want to call it. And you'll see some of the projects that you're working on, some of the things that are more recent, the registration for this class, the sign-in that you all use to get here, and any other things. Before we really get into that, I want to show you coming up here. Question mark, you can get help. And you can pop that out to a new tab. That's always, I find that a lot easier because this little pop-up here is quite small. Any notifications that there might be, if you are collaborating with somebody on a project, it will notify you that somebody has asked you to collaborate or that somebody you asked has accepted, and a few other things. You probably won't see a lot in there. This little switcher thing is new. The Customer Success Hub is really just a great big help and user support and learning place. It has this information, your username as Qualtrics sees it. The organization ID is something you might need in certain places. Where to get help. You can email me. If you email Qualtrics, sometimes they'll refer to me depending on what the question is. You know, if it's a back end kind of thing, they'll take care of it. Otherwise, they'll send it over to me. And all kinds of other help and neat stuff that you can look through. What's weird is that there's no switcher to switch back. So you just got to use the back button. What I really want to point out is if you come up here to the top and you click My Account, then you go to Account Settings. And you see some of that same information, the API, which most people don't have it turned on. If you really need it, then it'll tell you who to talk to. What I really want to show you and make sure that you set is the time zone. Sometimes people log in and it's some weird time zone. It's not. It'll be the time zone of your IP address. So if right now you are out in California, it should be California time rather than Eastern time. This is important, especially if you are setting dates and times for when your survey is available, dates and times for when you want emails sent out. It will go by whatever the time zone is set here rather than where you happen to be. So that's something you need to keep in mind. And there's a couple of other places, and I'll point them out as we go along over the next several weeks, where you really got to look and make sure that the time is correct, because people have gotten tripped up with that. If you want, you can change language. The grant-in login access, sometimes you need somebody at Qualtrics to log into your account to figure out what's going on. That's rare, but it does happen. And they will ask you to grant them access to your account. And this is where you would do that. And usually they will tell you where to find that and what to do when it's necessary. But as I say, you really want to be careful of the time zone. As it says, this is the new version. You can switch to the old version. There's a lot of extra information in the old version that you really won't need. This is much cleaner and much easier. Are there any questions about that? Okay, I'm going to close that up. And sometimes, if you have a lot of surveys that you're running all at once, you can star it and it will always be up at the top here. Just makes things kind of nice, a little bit easier. And you'll see this menu in a few places as we go along. Collaborate if you want to share and work on it with somebody. You can rename it, copy the project, edit, preview, the whole bit. We'll see all of these as we go along. View reports and delete project. Be careful with that, but Qualtrics is really good about not letting you shoot yourself in the foot unless you really, really want to. They will ask you a couple of times, do you really want to do that? Because deleting the project will also delete all of the data, not just the survey itself. And you can see all of the projects that you have. And you can create folders through them and filter the whole bit. And it will tell you when it was made and last modified, etc., how many responses there are. And again, this menu that we just saw. You always see some of these settings, and you can decide what columns you want to see. I've never changed it. I just leave it as is. So let's start with the beginnings of creating a project. You can click on Create Project. And now you get this screen, and they have all kinds of project templates, things that you can start off with, demographic polls, website stuff, help desk stuff, COVID-19 projects. When COVID-19 really took off, they made all these templates for people to use. Academic things, evaluation forms, etc. Most of the time, you're probably going to want to start from scratch. And so you come up here to survey and get this over here. It's a blank survey. That's a how-to, in the help section. You come down here to get started. And you can name the project whatever you like, whatever folder it will be put into in that big projects list page. And then how you want to start the survey. And you can start with either a blank survey. You can import what's called a QSF file, which is a Qualtrics survey files. Say you have a friend out in California or somewhere who did a survey that you want to replicate. They can export their survey to a QS file, email it to you, and then you import it, and boom, you have the whole survey already created for you. You can copy a survey from one of your existing projects, from that big project page. Or you can use a survey from the library, and we'll take a look at this. You have your library. There's all kinds of surveys that are in the library, not the projects. And then Qualtrics also has a library. Very much like the list of templates we saw. We're going to create a blank survey project to start off. It'll take a moment, and you're in. It will always give you a default question, and it's always this one little multiple choice thing here. There are a few things that you want to decide on and set before you even start creating the questions and everything else. And that's because with some of the look and feel things and accessibility and whatnot, it will affect what types of questions you can use and how your survey will work. You don't want to go and do a big long survey and then go back and pick a different, say, theme or other template and have it break your survey. So one thing we're going to look at to start off with is accessibility. If you come up here to Tools, and then down to Review, and you can do Check Survey Accessibility. And of course, we only have one question, and it is accessible. Not all of the questions in Qualtrics, all the question types are accessible. There are heat maps and sliders and all kinds of graphic type questions that are not accessible. But it will go through and it will test your survey. to make sure that everything is all these different kinds of accessibility uh, things that need to be minimal use of text entry boxes. Some of the accessibility checks that they do with these, it's kind of a judgment call on your part. With, say, like with the use of text entry boxes, I think if you have more than 4 or 5, it will say, oh, you have too many. But sometimes you need them, depending on what your survey is about. So that's a judgment call on your part. Other times, some questions are absolutely not accessible, but it may not be an issue for what you're doing. If you're doing a survey of air traffic control people, they are by definition not visually impaired. So it's okay to use a heat map and the other things in that kind of a survey. And as we go through, there's a few other things that we will talk about as far as accessibility is concerned. The other thing is when you come over here to this little paint roller, this is look and feel. And this is really nice because you can see get a general idea of what your survey will look like. You can also see what it will look like on a phone. And there's different kinds of themes that are available. Of course, if you're not in engineering, you're not going to use theirs. And sometimes some of these are old and they don't even actually work anymore. But for some reason, it's like impossible to get rid of on the back end. Technically, the Syracuse Simple is the one that you should be using. It is accessible. You can look at the new simple survey layout. And again, the simple one is the one that's recommended because it is the most accessible. You can look and see what the other ones look like. Next button and previous button. By default, you get this little arrow down here. That is not accessible, but you can always just change it to next and previous. And you see it automatically changed it down here. Progress bar. Technically, it's not accessible, but good survey design says put a text bar, a progress bar in rather. And it has with text, without text, with verbose text. Verbose text is only, it adds survey completion. And you can change where that goes, bottom or top. You can determine number of questions per page. That's really just more of an aesthetic thing. You don't necessarily want to have big, long pages of questions because people start getting tired with that. You can change your headers and your footers. Typically, you're not going to want to change much in here except for perhaps the size of the type, the point size. You don't want to do any kind of motion on the page transition. It can do, fancy stuff, like a PowerPoint slides. Don't do that. It's not accessible and it gets wonky, to say the least. You can change the logo if you need to. Background really shouldn't change because then you're getting into accessibility things as well. So as I say, you want to go in and set all of this before you start creating your survey, because as I mentioned, some questions are not accessible and may not be compatible with the theme or the layout that you've chosen. And you don't want to, as I said, you don't want to go through and make all your questions and then change your theme and your whole survey is blown up at that point. Of course, you need to make sure to come down and click apply. Are there any questions about look and feel? Okay. The next thing is to go to survey options.
Actually, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, I can.
Is this the area where we change, when you go back to the screen that has the survey with the next and things like that? There, that's what I was looking at these themes and I was trying to figure out where, yeah, okay. So that if I'm in Whitman, so if I wanted it to say Whitman, then I would go to the bottom and pick the theme that said Whitman.
Yeah. Yeah, you can do that. And as I say, some of these work better than others.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and so we go to survey options. Display name, this is just the name that comes up in the tab in the web form. And you can change it to whatever you want. Survey description, the base language. This is, it says in the translations tab, and also earlier when we did the settings in my account. Question numbers. This will show as you respond. Actually, it'll show the question numbers or not. By default, it's off. Now, here's another one of those trade-offs with accessibility. Accessibility says you should have the question numbers. The thing about that is if you have any kind of skip logic, display logic, randomization of questions, the question numbers are going to get all messed up. And so then it gets confusing to anybody who's using a screen reader to do the survey. So there again, there's your trade-off. There are things that you can do, as long as you don't have skip and display logic or any of that, it's just a straightforward survey. Putting the question numbers in is perfectly fine. Expert review, we'll see that actually kind of popped up already. It's when you click the publish button, it will do a quick run through of your survey to make sure there isn't anything weird or nasty going on. And publish does not actually mean you're sending it out to your respondents. Basically, it just means you're creating a major version. All the things that you've been working on, it will automatically save everything and set everything. It's not going out to anybody. You can add a back button if you want to allow your respondents to go back in your survey and change previous answers. You can allow them to leave and come back later on. This says if they're coming from an anonymous link. Thing about that is if they're sitting at a public computer and they do part of your survey and they want to come back later, they have to come back to the exact same machine. They can't do it again from home somewhere or some other public machine because it works by setting cookies and things. You can set custom error messages, and we'll see how to do that when we go along. What to do with incomplete survey responses and how much time you would want. My recommendation is always record them. Don't let Qualtrics decide for you to delete a particular response. Decide that yourself. And how much time before they're considered incomplete. Whether it's from the survey start time or the last time they edited the response. Survey availability, leave it open forever and ever, or set specific start and end times. And again, this is where your time zone that you set earlier comes into play. And this is easy. You can just set it as is and you're done. And whether you want the default message, which says, sorry, the survey's over with, or you can create your own message. And the same with inactive messages. Survey access, anyone or invitation only. Password. It's not really very secure because everybody gets the same password. But it can be helpful if you just want to, a little extra security to make sure not just anybody answers it. You can set it so that they have to come from a specific website. Multiple submissions. If it's an anonymous survey, people can sit there usually and retake the survey if you have it set to off. Sometimes if they keep doing that very rapidly, Qualtrics might flag the responses as spam. They won't delete it, but you'll see in the data, and we'll see later on, possible spam, which is nice, actually. You can do bot detection, security scans, relevant ID things, These are all extra security um, things. I've not known anybody to really need these. Um, Block search engines from including your survey. You usually want that on because you don't want just anybody happening upon it, usually. You can have users upload files through the survey, and how you want to give people access to those files. Usually you're going to do only users with permission. And then anonymize responses. It says don't record IP address, location data, and contact info. That contact info is if you're using a directory or what used to be called a contact list to send out your survey. IP address is considered personally identifiable information. So if your survey needs to be super anonymous, then you will want to turn on anonymized responses. On that page in the chat where I said the recordings will be posted, I have a couple of videos on anonymity in Qualtrics. So if that's a really important thing for you, if you're doing a highly sensitive survey, I strongly recommend you watch those videos because different options with different ways of collecting information will make a big difference in what data you actually get and what you can do with it. Then things to do at the end of the survey. You can send a thank you message. Now this would be emailed, so of course you need the person's email address, and that needs to be in a directory. If you want to let people redo their survey, these email triggers, don't use these. What you want to do is a workflow instead. These triggers are here because there are companies and people who, have had these email triggers for 10 years, and they're not about to go through all their surveys and redo it. So it's a legacy kind of thing. You'll want to do those through the workflows, and you can do a lot more in the workflows, and we'll do pretty much an entire class on these. And the same with the contact list workflows. Salesforce triggers, most of us don't have access to these. You need special access to the Salesforce things. Qualtrics can also do scoring, such as if you want to, like create a test to send to your respondents. Sometimes also, if you're doing a psychology survey or sociology and things, they have different sections of the survey that get collapsed into one variable. And there's a certain way of doing that. Some questions are worth more points than others. You can set that up through the scoring as well. And on my Qualtrics page, I have another video, either a video or a written guide on how to do that. Are there any questions so far? Okay. Can look at a couple of these other things. They're quotas. These can be useful if you want to make sure that you have, let's say, an equal number of freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. You can set up a quota so that once you get, say, 100 freshmen, the 101st freshman will come in and will say, thank you very much, but we already have all the answers we need. And then that way you can make sure that you get the equal numbers. And they can be pretty complex in these. And you can translate the survey and use with different languages. If you happen to do this and you are not a native speaker of the language to which you are translating your survey, find a native speaker and make sure that it translated correctly and that you're not going to end up offending any of your respondents because Qualtrics goofed somewhere. Oh, we will be doing an entire class on survey flow. And this is where you can do some really neat stuff, set up experimental designs and have different branches and whatnot. And as I say, we'll have an entire class on just this. We'll go through some more of the tools. Well, some of these we'll be seeing again. As I mentioned, one of the ways to start a survey is with a QSF file. And this is where you would do that. You could export it, get back here. You can export the survey, you can import a survey, you can print your survey as is. You can even export it to Word, and this can be useful if you need to have, say, an appendix to your dissertation or something that has your survey in it. And you can decide what goes into it, show the survey flow. This is also useful if you are doing research where you have to share your data at the end of your grant. You will need to use this for documentation purposes for the metadata. We have a question here. When you're using the post-survey response, thank you email, is there a place where the participant types in their email to generate the response? You can do that, yes. So you can ask somebody at the end of your survey, can we have your email? Let's say it's an anonymous survey. At the end, you can say, are you willing to give us your contact information? If they say yes, then in the survey flow, you send them to a new survey that asks for their contact information, set that up so that it puts their name into a directory, and then have the workflow. There's a few steps to doing that if it's an anonymous survey. If you're sending it out, to begin with using a directory, then you don't need to go through all that because you already have their email. So the answer is yes, but how easy or difficult depends on how you're doing your survey. 9 times out of 10, there's a way to do whatever you want to do. It's just not always obvious how you might do it. And that's why I have all those guides and tutorials and everything on that web page. Something else here. Oh, you get version histories, which are nice if you're doing some complex things and suddenly it's not working and you get frustrated. The best thing at that point is to go get a cup of coffee, take your dog for a walk, because it's often something it's right in front of you. If you're anything like me, it's staring you right in the face, just waiting to slap you upside the head. But you're just not seeing it. You can also go back to the previous version when you know it was working and start over again. We'll be seeing some of these other things as we go through auto number and whatnot. When I first started doing these several years ago, the first class, I just went through all the bells and whistles because there was only about a dozen of them. Now there's just too many. It'd be a 3-hour class just to show you everything. So now as we go through things, I show you what you really need. So preview is nice. So you can see and we'll see this again as we go through. You can restart it. You can place a bookmark so that if you have a long survey, you don't have to keep going through every page every time you want to test it. And then under tools, you can ignore validation because that's real nice because then you can just zip through things. You don't have to answer every single question properly just when you're, testing, especially if you've already tested it. And turn the mobile view on and off. What's nice is you can get a link to share the preview to send to other people to say, they can see the preview and comment on it. Are there any questions? About anything I've blasted through today or any other questions you might have about Qualtrics in general? Okay, then. Thank you, everyone, and I will see you all back here next Thursday at 3 o'clock when we will actually start building our survey and going through all the different kinds of questions and things we can do. And as I said, if you have any questions about anything, any data related Qualtrics, you're more than welcome to email me.